The Pacers just traded for Pascal Siakam, and depending on who you ask, they might tell you that this addition doesn't move the needle at all. I'm on the other side of things. I think he's a perfect fit, exactly what they've been needing at the 4 next to guys like Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton. People are really understating just how much he can push the team forward. When you talk about the Pacers, the first thing you have to mention is, well, their pace. They are the definition of a run and gun offense, looking to sprint down the floor at quite literally every single opportunity. Siakam fits right into this. His unique blend of length and athleticism makes him one of the deadliest fast break weapons in the NBA, currently 11th in the league at just under 6 points a game in transition. Just as a reference, Indiana as a team leads the league at over 27 transition points a game, but their attack is real well-rounded. They of course have Halliburton leading the charge, surrounded by streaking shooters such as Buddy Hield or Aaron Nesmith, an athletic finisher like Obi Toppin, but they don't have any singular guy in the top 30 in transition scoring. So adding a big-time open floor threat like Siakam just takes this to an entirely different level. It isn't just fast breaks, where they like to speed things up though. Even after made baskets, they get into their offense as quickly as possible. Basically, a more modernized version of the 7 seconds or less Suns that took the league by storm. That speed makes it way harder for the defense to properly set. So you'll have a lot of plays like this, where Toppin catches the ball with a driving lane to instantly attack, and all it takes is one dribble for him to set up a dunk. Siakam's going to have more opportunities to drive in early offense against scrambling defenses than he's ever had, and he's truly a devastating presence to deal with when attacking downhill. I mentioned his length. The dude's got a 7'3" wingspan, which gives him access to angles as a finisher that other players simply don't have. It also means that he doesn't have to completely break down a defender to create a good opportunity. All he needs is half a step by his defender, and that outstretched arm will take care of the rest. Here's another example. It starts with a ball screen that he rejects, and as soon as he gets that right foot by Kuzma's hip, he's already won the advantage. From there, it's just 2 lengthy strides and he's got a wide open layup. To weaponize his length even more, you'll often see him go to these spins. Just look at how much space he's able to carve out with one simple move. That takes him all the way to the front of the basket for an easy push shot. And he pairs that combination of length and athleticism with a pretty advanced handle, starting his attack by going between his legs both ways, then hesitating into a drive left before immediately spinning back to his right, and all that's to say it's really hard to keep him out of the paint. Those spin moves are also his go-to counter for when his initial driving lane gets taken away. This time you're going to see Asar Thompson cut him off, and with a little shoulder bump to set up that spin, he instantly creates at least 2 feet of space, leaving him with a great look at the basket. And here's a real similar play that starts with the shoulder bump and spin, but this time he's met by a second defender, to which he counters by dropping it off to the big man for an open dunk. Now feels like a pretty good time to mention that he's a really good passer, one of the best at his position, and this adds a layer to Indiana's offense that didn't exist before. Typically when Halliburton's on the floor, he's surrounded by guys who are exclusively looking to finish plays or get to their own shot. I already mentioned Hield, Nesmith, and Toppin. You've also got Mathurin, Turner, Jalen Smith. None of these guys are playmakers. The roster really only has 2 other passers, Nembhard and McConnell, who don't always share the floor with Tyrese, instead replacing him and running the bench units. So having a guy in Siakam who can not only get into the paint consistently, but also make a wide variety of quality passes can really stress defenses and unlock some more stuff for Halliburton away from the ball, like his lights out spot up shooting. It also gives them another option to run the ball screen game, which they love going to in the half court. Of course, he's a big threat to turn the corner on drives, but as soon as that big steps up to slow his momentum, he's dumping it to the roller for some easy offense. To keep him from getting into the defense like that, sometimes you'll see teams throw a more aggressive coverage at him, like a blitz, but remember, he's got the passing ability to consistently create advantages for his team to attack. And when he's played in drop coverage, like this one against the Pacers, I mentioned how hard it is to keep him from touching the paint. This time his screener pops into a wide open three. A pretty good example of why Siakam said that Miles Turner was second on his dream teammate list. It isn't just ball screens though, he also brings a perimeter isolation presence because of how good he is at getting downhill, which of course puts the defense in rotation and results in open threes for the guys around him. Remember, Indiana has way more shooting, so this is only amplified. Toronto hadn't really surrounded him with great spacing, but whenever he did find a lot of room to operate, it was clear how physically overwhelming he can be, this time using his inside shoulder to bump his defender and set up a finish. He's amazing at using his body to create space like that. Here's one where he drives baseline, and from this frame right here, it looks like there's no possible angle for him to attack. But by taking a power dribble into Mobley's chest, he finds himself an opportunity to lay it in. The way he initiates, plays through, and finishes around the basket with added contact helps him generate a decent amount of free throws, which is a big addition. Before the trade, the Pacers didn't have a single guy averaging more than 4.5 free throw attempts. Siakam's been over 5 for half a decade, peaking last season at almost 7. You'll also see him use those shoulder bumps and contact as a way to set up his mid-range game. Here the paint is packed and his lane gets taken away, but he's still able to find some good offense over the top. Remember those bump spins I just talked about? He can throw those straight into jumpers. Again, look at how much space he created with that simple move. And the ability to score from a touch further over defenders has helped him operate with a lack of spacing for years now. You've got 3 defenders touching the paint when he starts his drive, and with no path to the rim, he bumps his man, steps back, and rises up for a jumper. Compare that to a possession from the Pacers. The positioning is way different. One side of the floor is cleared, they've got 2 shooters lifted up top, so when Nesmith gets to the lane, he really only has one man to beat. So far this season, Siakam's shooting almost 48% on a great volume of mid-range shots, a pretty decent mark, and that's something I'd expect to look even better with his new squad. And I think Indiana can really benefit from adding his versatile perimeter creation. They're essentially just replacing Bruce Brown in the lineup and getting a big, athletic forward who can get to the rim, score from the mid-range at a high level, or create for others in both the half-court and transition. With that said though, I actually think it's Siakam's game from inside the arc that makes this trade really interesting. More specifically, his ability to operate out of the post. You'll often see him set up near the baseline so that he can get into some quick scoring moves right off the catch, or these post-ups could be used as a way to attack switches or punish mismatches, sealing off position deep in the lane and just using his size to get a bucket. It's not just smaller guys he'll go to work against though. This time it's Grant Williams, a literal brick wall, and he's still able to get in close before turning over his left shoulder for a little push shot. And here's one against the big man Richaun Holmes. Notice how Holmes overplays the middle, taking away that left shoulder turn, so he instead turns right for an easy lay. The big key here is that he can spin in either direction, which makes him pretty unpredictable with his back to the basket. Although I will say, his go-to seems to be this fall-away jumper over the right. And of course, as soon as some extra help or a double team comes, he's surveying the floor and punishing the defense as a playmaker. The reason I think this aspect of Siakam's game is so important to the trade is because Miles Turner is the only other guy on the team who can really post up. But it's a lot different. They aren't running the offense through him in these spots, rather capitalizing on advantages or switches with seals in the middle for quick scoring moves over the top. In the case of Pascal, we're talking about a legitimate source of creation, bringing an inside-out dynamic to the table that Indiana hasn't really had since Sabonis. We know Rick Carlisle loves running his shooters off of screens, so maybe they can implement some sort of split actions or back picks out of these post-ups. The overall point just being that it's another avenue for them to explore. Still though, you can't expect them to go away from what's helped them become the most efficient offense in NBA history, and in the half court that typically means lots of ball screens for Halliburton, whether it's a pick and roll, a pick and pop, a quick screen for him to pull up for three, whatever the case may be, that's pretty much the staple of their attack, and it calls into question where Siakam fits. The reason I say that is he's not a good three-point shooter. I'm not going to sit here and act like he's some disastrously bad shooter who completely tanks the spacing, but he's certainly not a guy who you want launching a bunch of catch-and-shoot threes. So, if the Pacers go to a spread pick-and-roll setup, what's the best way to utilize him? I'd expect him to spend most of his time operating along the baseline. He's got really good feel for moving without the ball and filling out space, like this play where he sneaks right behind the defense for an easy catch and finish down low. This time you're going to see the Raptors playing against a zone, and just watch Siakam. He knows when and where to move so that he can properly space the floor, and when Boucher cuts through, that's his cue to clear out to the corner. I know I said he's not a great shooter, but he's by far at his best from three in the corners, so it's not too bad of an opportunity at all. The big draw to having him on the baseline though is the size and finishing ability. In the dunker spot, he's someone who demands attention, and like I said, he knows how to move. As soon as OG starts his drive, notice how he repositions himself to create an easier passing angle, and from there the defense can't really do much. In these spots, he's not just a threat to finish plays, but also extend them by getting on the glass for second chance offense. That's another thing Indy doesn't have much of, so another key addition. I also think there's an interesting wrinkle for when they go to their high pick and roll game, and that's the fact that Siakam can be the screener. Remember, Indy starts a stretch five who can space the floor, and Pascal's got phenomenal instincts for slipping the screen, where he's just so tough to stop as a roller. If the defense plays a more aggressive coverage against what would be Tyrese Halliburton, it'll require a third defender to take away his downhill momentum, but that's when the passing comes into play, capable of making high-level reads in the short roll. All that's to say, there's a lot to love on the offensive side of things. You're taking a generational transition offense and adding an elite transition player. You're taking the league's best paint scoring team and adding a high-level, versatile paint scorer. There are ways he can elevate Halliburton's game both on and off the ball. He fills a few gaps for them with his ability to draw fouls, get on the offensive glass, and of course make plays for others. Dare I say it's a match made in heaven. But what about the defense? I'll keep this portion really frank. I compared the Pacers to Mike D'Antoni's Suns. They've also adopted the strategy of trying to win games by just simply outgunning teams, which has led to a bottom 5 defense. Now I think it goes without saying that taking a bottom 5 defense and making them competent requires either a complete game changer, think AD, Gobert, or a complete overhaul of the rotation, putting more of an emphasis on that side of the ball. So expecting Siakam to make a huge difference just isn't all that realistic. With that said, I do think he's an upgrade in some capacity. I wouldn't say he's still the level of defender he was back in 2019 or 2020, but he's got some nice tools. The length and his ability to move are the big keys. He's someone who can execute a lot of different coverages or roles on the floor. You need him to switch, defend the pick and roll, tag someone down low and recover to the perimeter. He can do these things pretty well. He's not a huge presence around the rim, but is still a body, so it's not like he's losing any value for the team there. And he's a solid rebounder. I actually want to focus on that point because the Pacers are an awful rebounding team. They have one guy averaging more than 6 rebounds, Turner, at 7. They're 29th in rebounds per game, 28th on the defensive side. Basically, when it comes to any metric of closing possessions, they suck. Siakam isn't Dennis Rodman, but over the last 3 seasons, he's been at just under 8 rebounds a game, which can go a long way when your squad can't grab any. So there are some defensive traits he brings to the table that can be valuable. I only have one concern, and it's a pretty big one: the motor and the buy-in. Will he do all of these things to the best of his ability? Only time will tell. But if he does, we're looking at a solid playoff team in the Pacers that just got better on both ends of the floor. On offense alone, he's good enough to compete for an all-star team, and he fits with the Pacers in more ways than one. So adding that to the league's best offense can have a pretty nice effect. And on defense, they're getting a versatile 4 next to Turner that they really have never had. If you're an overthinker, I'll put it into simpler terms for you. The Pacers were already good. They added a guy who's made 2 All-NBA teams and is still in the heart of his prime to pair with their superstar point guard, and the fit makes sense. I'm not sure just how good they'll be, but I can't wait to see them on the court and in action, especially when the playoffs roll around. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of the trade. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.